For 15 years, I never missed a single basketball game. I taught him everything: how to shoot, how to be a man, how to never give up. Then one Sunday morning, my wife casually mentioned it was time for Jordan to meet his real father. That's when I learned what betrayal tastes like. My name is Dwayne Barrett. I'm 42 years old, and I just learned the hardest lesson of my life. Love doesn't guarantee loyalty. The morning it all fell apart started like any other Saturday. Nicole was buttering toast at our kitchen counter. Jordan was wolfing down cereal before his AAU tournament, and I was double-checking his gear bag. The kid had grown 6 inches in the past year. Suddenly, my little point guard was looking more like a power forward. Pride swelled in my chest watching him lace up those new Jordans we'd picked out together. "You got your mouth guard?" I asked, zipping up the bag. Jordan rolled his eyes. "Yes, Dad." "Third time you asked." Nicole looked up from her toast, something flickering across her face when she heard that word. "Dad." She'd been weird about it lately, but I figured it was just stress from her new job at the insurance office. "We should probably head out soon," I said, checking my watch. "Coach Williams wants the team. They're an hour early for warm-ups." That's when Nicole set down her knife and said the words that would split my world in half. "Actually, Dwayne, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time Jordan met his real father." The kitchen went dead silent. Jordan's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, like I'd swallowed ice water. "His real father." I repeated, my voice staying steady even though everything inside me was shaking. Nicole nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. "Vince has been asking about him. He's clean now, got a steady job. Jordan deserves to know where he comes from." I looked at Jordan, waiting for him to say something. Anything, but the kid just sat there, staring into his cereal bowl like it held all the answers. "Jordan," I said quietly, "what do you think about this?" He shrugged, still not looking up. "I don't know. Maybe it'd be cool to meet him." Those words hit me harder than any punch I'd ever taken. 15 years of bedtime stories, homework help, teaching him to shoot free throws in the driveway, and it all got reduced to maybe it'd be cool. Nicole was watching me carefully, like she was waiting for me to explode. But I'd learned control in the National Guard. When the world's falling apart around you, you don't panic. You assess the situation and respond accordingly. "Okay," I said, setting down the gear bag. "If that's what you both want." Nicole blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "Okay. Yeah, okay." I grabbed my keys from the counter. "Jordan, you still want to go to the tournament?" "Yeah," he said quickly, finally looking up. "Yeah, of course." I nodded and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard Nicole say something, but the words were lost in the ringing in my ears. 15 years, and it took 30 seconds to undo it all. The tournament went like clockwork. Jordan played his heart out, scored 23 points, and led his team to victory. I cheered from the bleachers just like always, high-fived the other parents, told Coach Williams what a great game it was. Nobody knew that my world had just imploded over breakfast. On the drive home, Jordan kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "You okay, Dad?" he asked. The words still came naturally to him. That made it hurt worse. "I'm fine, son," I said. "Just thinking." But I wasn't fine. I was doing math in my head. 15 years times 365 days. 5,475 days of being his father. Of getting up at 5 a.m. for early practices. Of spending weekends at tournaments instead of fishing trips with my buddies. Of putting his needs first always. When we got home, Nicole was in the living room with her laptop, browsing something that made her face light up. She closed it quickly when we walked in. "How'd the game go?" she asked. "We won," Jordan said, heading straight for his room. "I'm gonna shower." Once he was upstairs, Nicole turned to me with that careful expression again. "I reached out to Vince," she said. "He's excited to meet Jordan. Maybe this weekend." I nodded, walking to the kitchen to grab a beer. My hands were steady, but inside I felt like I was free-falling. "That's fast," I said. "Jordan's been curious for a while now," Nicole replied, following me. "I think I've been putting this off longer than I should have." I popped open a beer and took a long pull. 15 years longer. Nicole's face flushed. "That's not fair, Dwayne. Isn't it?" I turned to face her. "I've been here every single day. Every practice, every game, every parent conference, every midnight fever. But now he's curious about a man who walked away before he could even walk." Vince was young. He wasn't ready for a child. And I was. I laughed. but there was no humor in it. I was 27, Nicole. I had no idea how to raise a kid, but I learned. I showed up. I stayed. Nicole's eyes were getting watery, but I wasn't done. You want to know what's really bothering me? I said, it's not that Jordan wants to meet his biological father. It's that you both made this decision without me. Like I'm just some guy who's been hanging around for 15 years instead of the man who raised him. You'll always be his dad, Nicole said quietly. I finished my beer in one long swallow and set the bottle down harder than necessary. Will I asked, because it doesn't feel that way right now. That night, I sat in my garage workshop, running my hands over the wooden basketball hoop I'd been carving for Jordan's 18th birthday. It was supposed to be a surprise, a handmade replica of the basket where he'd scored his first points in organized ball. Now it just looked like a monument to my own foolishness. I've been planning to give it to him next year when he graduated. But sitting there in the dim light, surrounded by the tools I'd used to build half the things in our house, I realized something. They'd already graduated from needing me. The carving could wait. Maybe forever. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the back porch with a cup of black coffee, staring at the basketball hoop I'd installed when Jordan was 8. The floodlight cast long shadows across the driveway where I'd spent countless hours teaching him footwork, ball handling, the fundamentals that made him the player he was today. By sunrise, I made my decision. Nicole found me there at 6 a.m., still in the same clothes from yesterday. Dwayne, she said softly, you've been out here all night. I stood up, my joints stiff from sitting in the cold. I'm leaving. Nicole's face went white. What do you mean leaving? I mean, I'm packing my things and getting out of your way. You and Jordan want to explore his roots, fine. But you don't need me here complicating things. That's not what we want, Nicole said, wrapping her robe tighter around herself. I looked at her, really looked at her. When did she stop being the woman I fell in love with? When did we become strangers sharing a mortgage? Isn't it? I asked, because from where I stand, it looks like you've already made your choice. Both of you. Nicole started crying then, but I was past the point where her tears could change my mind. Where will you go? She asked. Wyoming. Got some property up there for my grandfather. Needs work, but that's fine. I could use the distraction. Jordan's alarm went off upstairs, that annoying buzzer he'd been using since middle school. Soon he'd come down for breakfast, same routine as always, except nothing would ever be the same again. Don't tell him until after school, I said. Kid's got enough on his mind with this Vince situation. Dwayne, please. We can work this out. I shook my head. No, we can't. You made a choice, Nicole. Now I'm making mine. By noon, I had 2 duffel bags packed and my truck loaded. I left my key on the kitchen counter next to a note, taking some time to figure things out. Jordan, be good for your mother. Keep working on that jump shot. D. I didn't say goodbye. Goodbyes are for people who plan on coming back. The drive to Wyoming took 11 hours. 11 hours of interstate, country music, and the kind of silence that makes you face who you really are when everything else gets stripped away. My grandfather's cabin sat on 40 acres of nothing but pine trees and possibility. The roof leaked, the generator was shot, and the whole place smelled like decades of neglect. But it was mine. Nobody could take it away from me, and nobody could tell me I wasn't good enough for it. That first night, I sat by a fire I'd built with my own hands and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Vince showed up 3 days after I left. Jordan texted me about it. Just a simple, he's here, with no other details. I stared at that message for 10 minutes before putting my phone in a drawer and going back to work on the cabin's foundation. But Nicole called that evening, sobbing. Dwayne, please come home, she said. This was a mistake. A huge mistake. I was replacing rotted floorboards, my hands covered in sawdust and splinters. The phone was on speaker, sitting on a stack of lumber. What happened? I asked, not stopping my work. He's not what Jordan expected. He's different. Rougher. He keeps asking about money, about the house, about what I do for work. I set down my hammer. And Jordan barely spoke to him. He just sat there looking uncomfortable the whole time. When Vince left, Jordan went straight to his room and hasn't come out. I could picture it perfectly. My boy, realizing that biology doesn't make a man a father. Maybe this is something you two need to work through together, I said. He asked for you, Nicole whispered. When Vince was being inappropriate, Jordan looked around like he was expecting you to step in, like he always does. That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. For 15 years, I'd been Jordan's buffer between the world and all its ugliness. His protector. His steady presence. I can't fix this for you, Nicole, I said finally. You made your choice. I know I did. But I was wrong. Through the cabin window, I could see stars brighter than any I'd ever seen in suburbia. No light pollution, no noise, just pure silence and space to think. Being wrong doesn't undo the damage, I said. Jordan needs you. Jordan chose Vince. He was curious. That's all. He's 15, Dwayne. Kids that age don't always make good decisions. I picked up my hammer again, tested its weight in my hand. Good tools. Honest work. Simple problems with clear solutions. Neither do adults, apparently, I said, and hung up. That night, I found 3 more voicemails from Jordan. I didn't listen to them. Whatever he had to say, whatever apologies or explanations he offered, they wouldn't change the fundamental truth. When push came to shove, he'd chosen blood over bond, and I'd chosen pride over forgiveness. Maybe that made me the smaller man. But sitting there in my grandfather's cabin, surrounded by work that actually mattered, I found I could live with that. 2 weeks into my Wyoming exile, I'd established a routine. Up at dawn, coffee by the fire, then work until my hands bled. The cabin was coming together piece by piece. New roof, functional plumbing, a generator that actually worked. Every repair felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I was replacing the front steps when my phone buzzed. Jordan's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring. Then it buzzed again. And again. Finally, I picked up. What's up, son? Dad. His voice was shaky, younger than his 15 years. I need to tell you something. I sat down on the half-finished steps, hammer still in my hand. I'm listening. Vince is back. He came to the house last night, asking Mom for money. Said he needed it for a lawyer because he's getting sued by his landlord or something. I felt my jaw clench. What did your mother say? She told him no, but he wouldn't leave. He kept saying how he had rights as my father, how the house should be helping him out since he was trying to be part of my life. The picture was getting clearer. Vince wasn't interested in fatherhood. He was interested in what fatherhood might get him. Then what happened? I asked. I told him to leave. Jordan's voice got stronger. I told him you were the only father I'd ever known and that he needed to get out of our house. Something loosened in my chest. How'd he take that? He got mad. Started yelling about how you'd poisoned me against him. How you were just some wannabe dad playing house with another man's family. I gripped the hammer tighter. And then I got really mad. I told him that you never missed a game, never forgot a birthday, never walked out when things got tough. I told him that showing up after 15 years didn't make him my father. It made him a stranger. Pride swelled in my chest, followed immediately by regret. This kid, my kid, had figured out what mattered, and I wasn't there to see it. I'm proud of you for standing up to him, I said. Dad, I screwed up. We screwed up. Mom's been crying for days, and I miss you. I miss having you here. I stared out of the Wyoming mountains, at the endless sky that had become my refuge. I miss you too, son. Will you come home? The question hung between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. I don't know, I said honestly. A lot's happened. Trust takes time to rebuild. I know, but we want to try, if you'll let us. After I hung up, I sat on those unfinished steps for an hour, watching the sun set behind peaks that didn't know my name or care about my problems. Jordan was growing up, learning hard lessons about character and loyalty. The question was whether I was man enough to meet him halfway. 3 days later, Nicole called with news that changed everything. Dwayne, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm. I was splitting firewood behind the cabin, working out frustrations with an axe and determination. The steady rhythm helped me think. What's wrong? I asked, setting down the axe. Jordan's in the hospital. My blood turned to ice. What happened? He got hurt at practice. Came down wrong on a rebound and hit his head on the court. They're saying it's a concussion, but they want to keep him overnight for observation. I was already walking toward my truck. I'm on my way. Dwayne, wait. There's more. I stopped. More what? When the paramedics asked who to call, Jordan gave them your number. Not mine. Yours. He was pretty out of it, but he kept asking for his dad. Not Vince. You. The words hit me harder than any physical blow. Even semi-conscious, Jordan's instincts had reached for me. The nurses are confused, Nicole continued. They keep asking about his father, and I don't know what to tell them. Tell them I'm on my way. The drive from Wyoming to Oregon usually took 11 hours. I made an 8, stopping only for gas and coffee. My mind raced the entire way. Worst-case scenarios, medical complications, the 1,000 ways I'd failed this kid by not being there when he needed me. I walked into the hospital, still wearing work clothes, sawdust in my hair, looking like exactly what I was, a man who dropped everything to get to his son. The nurse at the desk looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for Jordan Barrett. I'm his father." She checked her computer. "Room 312. He's been asking for you." I found Nicole in the hallway outside Jordan's room, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. "How is he?" I asked. "Better. The doctors say he'll be fine, but—" She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "He won't talk to me, Dwayne. He's been awake for 2 hours, and he won't say a word to me. But the second he heard your voice in the hallway, his whole face lit up. Through the door window, I could see Jordan lying in the hospital bed, looking young and vulnerable under the harsh fluorescent lights. When our eyes met, he smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "Dad," he mouthed through the glass. I looked at Nicole, this woman who'd been my partner for so many years, who'd broken something between us that might never fully heal. "We'll figure this out," I said. "But right now, I'm going to see my son, because that's what fathers do. They show up. They stay. They put their kids first, even when pride tells them to walk away." And Jordan was still my kid, no matter what anyone else might say. Jordan was released from the hospital the next morning, but I stayed in town for 3 more days. We talked, really talked, for the first time since this whole mess started. I learned that Vince had been pressuring him for weeks, showing up at school, calling him during classes, making promises about trips and gifts he never followed through on. He kept saying how we were blood. Jordan told me, as we sat in his hospital room, how that meant something special. But when he was here, all he talked about was himself, his problems, his money troubles, his plans to get back on his feet. "And what did you think about that?" Jordan was quiet for a moment, picking at the hospital blanket. "I thought about all the times you helped me with homework, even though you'd worked a 12-hour shift. About how you never missed a game, even when you were sick. About how you taught me to change a tire in the rain because you said a man should know how to take care of himself." Those words hit me like a physical blow. All those small moments I thought were just being a dad, they've been building something bigger in this kid's mind. "I realized something in that ambulance," Jordan continued. "When I was scared and hurt, I didn't want Vince. I wanted you, because you're the one who's always been there when I needed you." I had to clear my throat before I could speak. "That means everything to me, son. Will you come home?" The question I'd been dreading. I looked at this boy I'd raised, saw the hope in his eyes, and felt the weight of 15 years of love and loyalty. "I don't know if your mother and I can fix what's broken between us," I said honestly. "Maybe you don't have to," Jordan said. "Maybe you just need to fix what's broken with me." That evening, Nicole and I sat in a hospital cafeteria over terrible coffee and day-old sandwiches. She looked exhausted, older than her 40 years. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know how hard this must be." "He's my son," I said simply. "Nothing changes that. I was wrong, Dwayne. About everything. About Vince, about what Jordan needed, about what we had together." I studied her face, looking for sincerity behind the regret. "Why, Nicole? After 15 years, why did you decide I wasn't enough?" She was quiet for a long time, stirring her coffee with a plastic spoon. "Because I was scared," she said finally. "Scared that Jordan would grow up wondering about his biological father and blame me for keeping them apart. Scared that maybe I'd robbed him of something important." "So you robbed him of something you knew was important instead?" Nicole's eyes filled with tears. "I know how that sounds, but I thought maybe we could have both. The stability you gave us and the connection with his birth father. That's not how it works," I said. "You can't have it both ways. Either I'm his father or I'm not. You were his father. You always have been." I finished my coffee, tasting nothing but bitterness. "Then why did it take him getting hurt for you to remember that?" 2 weeks later, I drove back to Wyoming with a decision weighing on my mind. Jordan called every day, sometimes twice. Nicole left voicemails that I didn't return. The cabin work continued, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. The truth was, I missed them. I missed the chaos of teenage hormones and basketball schedules. I missed Nicole's laugh, even though I wasn't sure I could trust it anymore. But some betrayals cut too deep to heal with apologies in time. I've been back in Wyoming for a week when I found a box. It was tucked away in my grandfather's bedroom closet, behind a stack of old hunting magazines and moth-eaten blankets. The cardboard was water-stained and brittle, but the contents were preserved inside plastic bags. Letters. Dozens of them, all addressed to me. I recognized the handwriting immediately. My army buddies from Afghanistan. These were letters I'd never seen, sent to my grandfather's address during my deployment years ago. Letters thanking me for things I'd barely remembered doing. Dwayne, one letter read, I don't know if you realize what you did for me that day in Kandahar. When that IED went off and I was trapped under the Humvee, you stayed with me for 6 hours while they cut me free. You kept talking to me, kept me conscious, probably saved my life. My daughter's getting married next month, and I get to walk her down the aisle because of you. Another, you taught my squad how to stay calm under fire. That lesson saved 4 of us when we got ambushed near Bagram. I'm writing this for my son's Little League game, thinking about how different things might have been if you hadn't been there. Letter after letter, story after story. Men I'd served with, men I'd trained, men whose lives I'd touched without even realizing it. Heroes calling me a hero. I sat on a cabin floor surrounded by these testimonials to a man I'd forgotten I used to be. In the Army, I'd been someone who made a difference, someone people counted on, someone who mattered. When had I stopped believing that about myself? My phone rang. Jordan's name on the screen. Dad, you need to see something, he said without preamble. What's that? I found some old videos Mom took when I was little. There's this one from when I was maybe 6, and we're in the backyard working on my jump shot. You remember. I closed my eyes, trying to picture it. Not specifically. We worked on your shot a lot. In the video, I make a basket and run over to hug you, and you pick me up and spin me around, and I'm laughing so hard I can barely breathe. Then I look right at the camera and say, that's my dad. He's the best dad in the whole world. My throat tightened. Jordan. I've watched it 20 times today. I remember that feeling, Dad. That complete security of knowing you were there, knowing you cared, knowing I was important to you. I looked around the cabin, at the repairs I'd made, the isolation I'd chosen, the pride I'd been nursing like a wound. You were important to me, I said. You still are. Then come home. Please. Not for Mom, not to fix their marriage. Come home for me, because I need my dad. After I hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness, letters scattered around me like evidence of a life well lived. Outside, Wyoming's silence stretched endlessly, beautiful and empty. But inside, something was shifting. Pride was a luxury I could afford alone in the mountains. Love required more courage than that. Maybe it was time to remember who I used to be, not just in the Army, but in my own home. The man who showed up, the man who stayed, the man who chose family over pride, even when family had chosen poorly. That night, I started packing. I drove back to Oregon on a Thursday morning, my truck loaded with the few things that mattered from the cabin. The rest, the solitude, the isolation, the wounded pride, I left behind in Wyoming's endless sky. Nicole was at work when I pulled into the driveway. Jordan was at school. The house looked exactly the same, but I felt like a stranger approaching a life that might no longer fit me. I used my key. Nicole hadn't changed the locks, which surprised me. Inside, everything was clean but hollow. The silence felt different than Wyoming's peace. This was the silence of absence, of conversations that should have been happening but weren't. I was sitting at the kitchen table when Jordan came home from practice. He dropped his gear bag and just stared at me for a moment. You came back, he said simply. I came back. He sat down across from me, still wearing his practice jersey. 15 years old, but carrying himself with new weight, new understanding. Are you staying? He asked. That depends on a lot of things, I said honestly. But I want to try. What about Mom? I looked around the kitchen where we'd shared thousands of meals, where I'd helped him with homework, where this whole mess had started. Your mother and I have some things to work out. But Jordan, whatever happens between us, nothing changes between you and me. You're my son. That's not conditional on anything else. Jordan's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Dad. For all of it. For being stupid about Vince. For hurting you. For making you leave. You were curious about your roots. That's normal. But now you know the difference between the man who contributed to your DNA and the man who chose to be your father every single day. Yeah, I do. Nicole came home an hour later and found us in the garage, working on the basketball hoop I'd been carving. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching us sand the wooden backboard together. "Dwayne," she said quietly. I looked up from my work. "Nicole, I didn't think you'd come back. I didn't think I would either." She stepped into the garage, looking nervous. "Can we talk?" Jordan stood up, brushing sawdust from his hands. "I'll be inside doing homework." After he left, Nicole and I sat on opposite sides of the workbench, the half-finished hoop between us like a bridge we weren't sure how to cross. "I filed a restraining order against Vince," she said. "He showed up at my work last week, demanding to know where you'd gone. Security had to escort him out." "Good." I also started seeing a counselor to figure out why I sabotaged the best thing in my life. I set down my sandpaper. "And what did you figure out?" "That I was scared of being happy. Scared that if I just accepted what we had, something would come along and take it away. So I created the very chaos I was afraid of." The garage was quiet except for the sound of neighborhood kids playing basketball in a driveway down the street. Normal sounds of normal families living normal lives. "The question is," I said, "do you want to fix this? Or do you just want me to come back so things can be comfortable again?" "I want to fix this. I want to be worthy of the man who spent 15 years raising another man's child like he was his own, who left when he was hurt, but came back when that child needed him." I studied her face, looking for the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. She was still there, underneath the regret and fear. "It's going to take time," I said. "I know, and trust doesn't rebuild overnight." "I know that too." I picked up the sandpaper again, running it along the smooth wood grain. "Then let's see if we can build something new from what's left." 6 months later, I was installing the finished basketball hoop in our driveway when Jordan came home from his AAU tournament with news that changed everything. "Coach got a call from Oregon State," he said, barely containing his excitement. "Full scholarship offer. They want me to visit next month." I set down my drill and looked at this young man who'd grown 3 inches since I'd been back. Taller, stronger, more confident in his own skin. "That's incredible, son. You've earned it. I want you to come with me on the visit." "What about your mother?" Jordan shrugged. "She can come too, but I want you there. You're the one who taught me everything I know about basketball. About working hard, staying disciplined, being a good teammate." Pride swelled in my chest, but it was different now. Cleaner. Not the desperate need for validation I'd felt before, but the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. "I'd be honored to come with you." That evening, the 3 of us sat on the back porch watching Jordan shoot free throws of the new hoop. He'd developed a routine: 15 shots, collect the ball, 15 more. The repetition I taught him, the discipline that would serve him well in college and beyond. 90%, Nicole said, watching him sink another shot. "He's improved so much since you've been back." "He improved because he wanted to," I said. I just reminded him what he was capable of. Nicole reached over and took my hand. 6 months of counseling, honest conversations, and rebuilding trust had brought us to this moment. Not perfect, but real. "I got a letter from Vince's lawyer yesterday," she said quietly. I tensed. "What kind of letter?" "He's relinquishing all parental rights. Permanently. He said he doesn't want any connection to our family." I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't realized was still tight. "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved. It means Jordan never has to wonder about court battles or custody issues. It means you can legally adopt him if you want to." I looked at Jordan, who was now working on his 3-point shot, completely focused on perfecting his form. "He's already my son," I said. "Has been for 15 years. But yeah, making it official sounds right." 2 years later, I stood in a courthouse with Jordan, now 6'3", and headed to Oregon State on that full scholarship, as a judge made what had always been true legally binding. "Do you, Jordan Barrett, consent to this adoption?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Jordan said, his voice strong and sure. "Dwayne Barrett has been my father since I was born. This just makes it official." After the ceremony, as we walked out of the courthouse into Oregon sunshine, Jordan stopped on the steps. "Dad," he said, "I need to tell you something." "What's that?" "I never doubted you were my real father. Even when I was curious about Vince, even when I made that stupid mistake, I always knew who my real dad was." I put my arm around his shoulders, this young man I'd raised, who'd raised me right back. "I know, son. I always knew too. Because that's what real fathers do. They love unconditionally, forgive when it hurts, and show up every single day. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to see that love reflected back in the eyes of a child who chose you just as surely as you chose them. Blood might determine biology, but choice determines family. And Jordan Barrett was my family, now and always.